so obvious previously. Well, let's now set the pace for our fertilizer conversation today. And these are some of the graphics that we prepared for you just for your understanding and for your benefit of what we'll be talking about today in terms of the fertilizer conversation. Let's look at some of the common fertilizers that Kenyans actually love and what we have available in the country. Very well. So we have different types of fertilizers. So there are organic fertilizers. Of course, this comes from droppings of animals and the like. And then we have inorganic fertilizers, which is what we're going to be focusing on today, and a bit of chemical fertilizers too. Biofertilizers, chelated fertilizers, deficiency correctors. Of course, if your soil science is not so properly put together, those fertilizers would come in to assist in that. Let's talk about the methods of application. What methods are used actually to, add some of these farm inputs. So there is soil or root application. The soil or root process involves directly or indirectly applying fertilizers to the base of the plant, either diluting in water or directly so that it is soluble in the soil for the consumption of the plant. Then there is also foliar. So its purpose is to make the primary nutrients such as phosphorus, nitrogen, and potassium quickly and available to the plant. Lastly, we have one here that is called fertigation. This one, of course, consists dilution or dissolution of different fertilizer in the irrigation water so that it goes together with the water content, together with the fertilizer, are introduced to the soil so that the crop can actually access those vital nutrients for growth. Now let's look at the government subsidy program of the fertilizer. It was announced on 1st April. It was to take effect on Saturday, 2nd April, by CS Munya, right there. Government set aside 5.73 billion Kenya shillings to subsidize up to 114,000 metric tons of fertilizer. Fertilizer were retailing as high as 7,000. Let's look at what the prices were after that government subsidy program. We'll also be talking about that with my guest who's joining us virtually. Now, the prices after the subsidy, DAP is now retailing at 2,800 shillings. We apologize, we haven't put the unit currency right there, but it is in shillings. The CAN is retailing at 1,850, urea at 2,700, NPK will be selling at 3,000 Kenya shillings, MOP at 2,500, sulfate of ammonia goes for 2,500. But even with this subsidy, farmers are still crying foul over increased prices in the farm inputs. Joining me now to discuss all matters fertilizer is Yara East Africa Country Manager William Ngeno. Ngeno joins us virtually in Nairobi. Ngeno, good to see you. Farmers are still crying foul over the inflating costs of farm inputs, even with the government subsidy program in place. What's a lasting, sustainable solution towards this, William?
Thank you, and thank you for having me on today's show. I think the big answer from me will be planning. Planning is the key to be able to alleviate this, because when we start looking ahead, we can start to look at solutions that are more sustainable and available to the farmers at this point of time. You see, at the start of the year, we were talking about 3.1 million food insecure people in Kenya. And you can see the kind of inflation that has happened in the food industry. Our food is becoming more expensive, and the problem is coming from productivity, because since the last short rains, you've had a lot of less production. So it's starting to bite now. And then when you fertilizer application is equivalent to productivity. As long as the fertilizer usage is lower, the productivity will be lower, and then the effects is what we are seeing in the market. So I think as a country, we need to plan ahead. We need to look at the variables that are coming, because we are not producers of fertilizers. We are net importers of fertilizers. So the influence we can have is to plan and ensure that we have enough stock of fertilizer in our country.
The question then would be, you as the private sector, have you received the government subsidy on this one? And how is this impacting also as you sell outside there to the farmer?
Yeah, so first of all, I need to commend the government, because they stepped in at the right time. You can see the price of fertilizer went in almost 3 times the farmer was paying last year. And that, in a way, is, of course, inhibiting the usage, and that would translate to less productivity. Government has called us and involved us as the private sector. So we are participating in it, but we are participating as, of course, the importers as private sector on terms agreed on with the government. This came on a short notice, and that's why I started with planning, because we have to plan ahead. Our normal business in the private sector is like any other business. We look at demand and supply, and we are there to meet that demand. So the plan was to meet the open market sales, which was declining because most of the farmers could not afford to buy a bag at 7,000 shillings. So I think it's a good effort that we are able to avail also these fertilizers options for the farmers across the country.
This here may not be a very good point particularly for business, but in the wake of a crisis where we cannot even avert the hard prices that are now facing the farmer in the fertilizer sector, what alternatives does the farmer have?
So as a farmer, first of all, is to look at farming as a business. I think I've said this in the previous shows that we had, because the challenge would be, how do you make your farm profitable? As long as we are producing suboptimally, it would be very difficult to break even and eventually drive that business of productivity. So the alternative that's available for the farmer is, let's build the soils. Soil health. Soil health is the foundation of everything. And if you look at our soils, and I always say, as long as we are not enabling the soil to feed the crop, it's going to be difficult. Even if we continue applying a lot of fertilizers, it is not going to be sustainable. So the first step is, how can you build a good soil health to enable that whatever is available in the soil, whatever nutrition, because at the end of the day, fertilizer is about feeding. It's like the way we feed every day, 3 times a day. The crop feeds also. So if we enable good pH by ensuring that acidic soils, we are converting them and restoring them by lime application, we enable the farmer to use even less fertilizer in the future. Use organic matter. At Yara, we look at a whole solution, wholesome solutions, because as much as we are driving knowledge on specific fertilizer, through our research, we have found out that a farmer who combines the use of organic matter, whatever is available, organic material, waste from the livestock, cow, chicken, and all that, waste from households, and you start to build your soils with good organic matter. Over time, you build reserves in the soil. And the soil is a living thing. It's a host of all the nutrients. So farmers who have been building their organic matter over the years even will have less effects from less fertilizer application. And this is something I would like to encourage, because as a company that drives nature positive future, we want to see sustainability. Part of our program is, our recommendation is, we give recommendation of fertilizer which is specific to the different crops, but also non-acidifying. But most importantly is to have a good agricultural practice by a farmer to ensure that they are building their good organic matter and restoring soils which are acidic. More than 50% of our soils is acidic. So if we don't restore this kind of soils, whatever we do to that soil doesn't really become sustainable in the future, because it will force us to continue just using higher rates of fertilizers over the years to be able to achieve higher productivity. So to your question...
Okay, go ahead, sorry.
It's a question of competence. I think we need to build this in the competence of the extension service. We are doing our bit at Yara and the private sector to be able to deliver this knowledge. We have more than 120 agronomists spread all over the country working with our channel partners to be able to train farmers as they come to the shops and agrovets to pick goods. We have also established centers of excellence and so in the different regions across the country. Those centers of excellence is a practical knowledge center where farmers go and learn A to Z of a particular crop. And this we do with different partners in the different crop: maize, sugarcane, potatoes, coffee, and we will also be shifting to legumes. So these centers, we've opened to the public, that the farmers are able to come in to learn A to Z, working with our partners. In some areas, we work with even government institutions so that farmers can learn A to Z. Because in the wake of current food insecurity,